You are listening to Adulting with Ebony, a podcast for the awesome weirdos, creatives, seekers, healers, space holders, and personal development veterans who are ready to self-actualize and take their unique magic to the next level. This is for you if you identify as a spiritual being having a human, physical, and emotional experience and sometimes struggle to focus or know what to trust and what to tune out. I'm your host, Ebony Allard, aka Ebony Alchemy. I'm a neurodivergent modern mystic, author, artist, and facilitator. I'm an international award-winning master coach, certified in multiple brain integration technique and human design. I've been in the personal development, creativity, and entrepreneurship spaces all of my life, and I have special interest in the psycho-spiritual development of human beings that I share by helping you lead yourself to greater empowerment, embodiment, and full self-expression. Stick around to hear raw and real conversations about the reality of adulting, personal growth, self-actualization, and mysticism through the lens of curiosity as I ask, what part of being an adult do you think we all suck at? And what part of being a grown-ass adult are you in awe of? Hello. So we are going to do a slightly different introduction today. I'm going to get Abigail to tell you all about herself. Is that even English? Will you introduce yourself for us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Abigail Rebecca. I am a human design visibility mentor. I love to empower women to be highly visible and confidently expressed, and most importantly, align their unique human design to their business strategy. And I'm all about trusting your inner guru, like really coming back to not just self-love, but self-trust, trusting our wisdom, the wisdom that lies within us. And I'm really passionate actually about empowering women to have a voice, based on the fact that I wasn't raised without a voice. I was raised in an environment that was very disempowering to women. So I'm very passionate about empowering women to create success and wealth and just joy and happiness within their business. And my company's name is Abigail Rebecca, and I live in the UK, and I have an amazing partner and a sausage dog. And yeah, I think that's all you need to know.
Yay! Thank you. I love that, and it's really helped me to hone in on what we're going to talk about today, actually.
Okay,
And
cool.
there were so many things that we could have talked about. And I was like, oh, I've got Abigail for a podcast. What are we going to talk about? And the pieces that I really want to shed some light on or bring a voice to and invite you to talk about are these pieces of being a projector, which is about being invited and like having this voice that you want to use so badly, but needing the environment or the energy or the circumstance or situation to be right or aligned for that to happen. And growing up in an environment where that was your experience. And so I'm really curious, like when you discovered human design, when these pieces linked together for you, and what that meant for you in terms of your adulting or inner leadership or self-initiation, if you like.
I discovered human design about 7 years ago. I was at a conference in Palm Springs, and it was just the most incredible experience, really, even today, because I'd left corporate. I just left like a 14-year, very successful corporate career. I was definitely healing from the PTSD and the trauma from being in corporate and I guess playing a role that I really didn't want to play anymore. And I went to an event that my coach was hosting. And I was just meeting the most amazing women there. And I started to speak to this woman from Canada, and she was telling me all about human design. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then I was like, oh, what's that over there? And that was the conversation. I wasn't that rude, but it was almost like, oh, that's really nice. And then there was so many things that were coming at me, so many things that I was learning. I guess it just stayed with me. And of course, I remembered her because she's incredible and we're still in touch. And then just human design just kept showing up. in my arena. I was working with, mentors or coaches that would mention human design, or, I'd read about it, or, what happens, like these things just keep being sent as signs. And then it was probably about 5 years ago, and I started working with a very, very dear spiritual mentor, business mentor. We became really good friends, and I was speaking at one of her events, and one of her speakers was talking about human design. And I was like, you know what, I really need to look at this. And I didn't even know what I was, and I didn't really know a lot about it. And then very slowly I started to explore it and realize that I was a projector. And I think, as most of us have this experience, I was like, oh my God, seriously, really? Like, really? That, okay, really? I'm not lazy. Okay. Like, it was just like all these pennies were dropping, and things started to fall into place very, very quickly, actually, for me. I was like, oh my goodness, that's why I am like I am. And then I started to introduce it with my clients, and they absolutely loved it. And then I was like, right, I need to create a business around it. So it was a very slow burn, but then I very quickly appreciated it and started to explore it more. And I'm still down the rabbit hole and still don't understand everything about it. I'm still learning, and it's incredible. It's a wonderful journey.
And that link for you, I mean, is there a link? Because to me it is. But the link between, being a projector and experiencing this childhood, which I don't think we've actually shared, what it was. I think we've alluded to it, but for those who don't know, kind of what was the environment that you grew up in? And for you, is there a link between, this experience of having your voice uninvited, if you like, and then taking back your power and finding ways of recognizing yourself and stepping into that space?
I was raised I was a third generation Jehovah's Witness. I was born into I call it a cult. Other people might disagree. Certainly my experiences of it were intense love, actually. My parents loved me very much, and they were sure raising me the best way that they thought that they could and should. But it was very disempowering to me, especially as a woman. Women didn't really have a role to play within the organization in terms of leadership. So I was raised very much to be a wife and mother. And I always say that that's a beautiful role to have, but it's a beautiful role to have when you choose it. And I didn't have any choices around it. My father chose all of my school subjects, needlework, cookery, childcare. You get the theme. You get the theme. I wasn't allowed to challenge anything. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion on anything. I wasn't allowed to displease Jehovah. And so I was raised to be very submissive, especially to men. And I didn't feel that way. There was I think there was a part of me that was conditioned to be like that, but inside I didn't feel it. And I was always questioning, and I was like, but I don't understand it. That doesn't make sense. And I don't understand it. And then I wasn't allowed to ask, because that meant that I didn't believe. And there was a lot of fear around the world ending, and just fear, about being thrown out of the organization and losing all your friends and family. And it got to a point when I was 16 that I had to make a choice, and I had to make a decision between staying there and having that life, or leaving and choosing freedom. But by choosing the freedom, I then had to leave my friends and family, majority of my friends and family, behind. And I look back now at that experience, and at the time I was so excited, and it was an adventure, and I was so relieved to leave. Mm-hmm. And I look back now and I'm like, I was such a baby, 16 years old. Seriously, it's ridiculous. And I'm really proud of that decision that I made. And it's really interesting, as a projector. I think when people, a lot of women that I work with, when they realize that they're a projector, I think they kind of think that it's quite a passive way to be, in comparison to the manny-gens. It's a different energy. But actually it's not passive. It's just really creating that you can create situations for yourself that you're being invited into. And that's one of the things that I teach. Like you're a master of your own destiny, and you can create these situations and you can manifest things in that way. But I think that really played into my passiveness. And so it was interesting, like when I was a child and also when I left, there was a part of me that was very passive, and then a part of me that was really fiery. And I think my personal journey has been to bring those together so that there's a balance, and definitely human design has helped me with that.
I'm so nosy. I'm like, now I want to know what your profile is. I love fitting stuff together. It's like, oh, you know, and that's why I love human design, because it isn't dogma to me. I really see it as a frame rather than it being dogma. And I think, yeah, maybe it's similar for you when you come out of something where there is dogma and it's like, this is how it is. And the framework of human design is much more it's an experiment for a start, right? Like, so you get to go and play with it and ask the questions and experience it for yourself versus being told like, this is how it is, you know?
I completely agree with you, Ebony, completely agree with you. I am anti putting ourselves into boxes. And I know for sure you are the same. It's not like, oh, well, I'm a projector, so I can only do this and I can only do that. Like, it's taking that knowledge and then playing with it and having fun with it and just testing the edges. Like, I'm constantly pushing the edges of it, of my projectiness. I'm like, oh, could I initiate in this? You know, like, how's that gonna land? But yeah, I completely agree. And I always laugh, you know, when anyone ever kind of calls it a framework or anything like that, because I'm like, it's not a framework. It's very, very flexible. And you know, I was put in a box for the first 16 years of my life, and I was in it was in a cult like environment, so I know what it's like to be in this, and this is not the experience. My profile is a 4/6.
Okay.
So and that was such a huge revelation for me with my business, when I realized that how important communities were. I get my opportunities through other people 100%. It's always been like that, but I was always kind of trying to fight against it. I was always trying to be like, I think I was trying to be like a 5, you know, a line 5 manager and all of my life, and actually sitting with that and accepting it and being like, okay, yeah, I probably need to wait a little bit. I need to build relationships with people. Might not necessarily be able to sell to strangers. And then the line 6 of my human design, as we're recording this, I'm 49, so I'm going to be 50 next May. And this slide off the roof of life into, well, first of all, I'm really excited about being 50. And I never thought that I would say that. But again, human design has given me access to that, because I'm like, oh, what's going to happen in my 50s? But I feel, oh my goodness, this slide, I'm really feeling it. I'm really, really feeling it this year. It's very uncomfortable.
I love that. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing it. I like, for me, I'm like, oh, of course, because that piece that I was talking about in terms of like being a projector, not having that voice, being so brave, stepping out into something else and going and finding it is such a like the 6 part with that 3 line. The first part of your life was not working, right? Like, it's the experience of failure in the vehicle, right? Of like, yes, this doesn't work. And the 4 being like, consciously being like, this community, this like, the quality of the people in my life isn't going to work for me, isn't serving me. I need to go out and find different people, even though it's essentially death, right? Because it's everything that I've known or whatever. And this is why I love it, because when we then look at it, we're like, oh, it makes sense. Like, our path is here. And for me, one of the biggest questions in my life that I haven't always known consciously has been this piece around free will and destiny, or fate and kismet, right? Like all of this stuff. And I have a lot, as a 5-line manifesting generator, I have a lot of stuff with patience, and I have a lot of stuff with everybody else being jealous of my energy or my voice or my this or my that. And I'm like, you have no idea how much waiting around has to happen when you are the hair, right? When you're like, oh, where is everybody? And one of the things that's going on in my life at the moment is I have a situation where somebody else that I want to be doing something with isn't ready. And I had this realization the other day. It's like, oh, I've done all this quantum leaping in my life. Was it really worth it? Because now I've quantum leaped to my timeline and they have not quantum leaped to their timeline. And now I've got to sit around and wait for them, right? Maybe not. But then we're in this intersection again of like free will versus fate. And like, what is this pathway? And I know so many 6 lines and again, so many projectors who have this shared quality of like, I don't want to wait for my life, which is one perspective on it. And then I hear you talk and I really see you in your power as a projector and as a woman and as a 4/6 in this place of like, oh, I lived that bit and now I'm living, and then I lived that bit and I've been introspective and I've been learning and listening and integrating and honing my ability to see. And then you get to step into this third piece where just by being you, we all get to learn so much. Like, how cool is that? Like, it is all perfect and the timing of our lives is perfect. But one of the things I struggle with or suck at the most is believing that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you just described it so beautifully. And I made so many mistakes, so many mistakes. And I'm so grateful for all of those mistakes because it's quite difficult sometimes to explain what it feels like. Like from when I was 30, I was working overseas. I was like living the life overseas. I was a holiday rep. So for those of you who don't know what holiday rep is, I was basically like overseas working with people that are on vacation and showing them a good time. Let's put it that way. So I had a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back. It's interesting that I came back when I was 30.
Mm.
And I feel like I didn't completely remove myself from society, but there's been a disconnect. Mm. It's just been a slight disconnect. It does feel like I've been sort of just just looking in. But don't get me wrong, I've also had a really nice time up on the roof. So I think that when you are waiting, you can still have a great time. It's just being able to manage that desire to kind of get going. But you'll be on a different perspective with me, a different energy level anyway, of me being a manager. I've learned, I think as a projector, naturally, my natural tendency is to be okay with waiting because I have to wait all the time for the freaking invitation. I think it's just my conditioning
and I think
that makes it.
Because again, I have so many people that when you said, and when I learned about being a projector, I was like, oh, amazing, I'm not lazy, I'm not this. I was speaking to someone really recently and she's still in a kind of place of it's not fair, I don't like being a projector. And I'm like, but it's like everybody's design is perfect, absolutely perfect. There is no better and there is no worse or any of those things. It's really about aligning with how we're designed. And I think the piece that doesn't get talked about enough with projectors is the recognizing yourself first. Like there is a hack. there is a shortcut here. It's like the more you recognize yourself, the more you're going to get recognized by other people. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it for myself. I think also my line 4 as well, feeding into that, this absolute fear of rejection that comes from my line 4 because community, other people are so important to me. Then really hanging my hat on the opinions of others. I remember like torturing myself ever since I was little. Like if there was any kind of, because I'm very perceptive of other, I can pick up on things very easily. And if I ever felt that in some way someone was not happy with me, or I'd offended someone, or just any little thing, I would completely blow that out of proportion, and just it would be going over and over and over the scenario, and it was just horrible, because I was like, oh, that person doesn't like me anymore, like they're not going to be friends with me. And actually that continued into my adulthood. And now I think, yes, it's come from learning about my human design. Of course it has, because it's an incredible tool to know oneself. But also, I think just with the wisdom of life, and I never thought I'd ever say this about myself, because I felt very, very immature for most of my life. And I definitely haven't felt like an adult. But I think probably with this sliding off the roof of life as well that I'm going through at the moment, I'm really kind of tapping into that wisdom and that appreciation. And the more I can honor myself and respect myself and love myself and really own my gifts, the more that is received by others. And it's brilliant, because it just means all I need to do is just work on myself, which is quite nice, right? Just do nice things. And sometimes it might be a bit stretchy and confronting, but that's good. It's for the greater good. But yeah, I do feel that I don't, as long as I can give myself that love, I don't necessarily need anyone else to do that to validate me, which is a great gift, actually, as a coach, as a mentor, because it means that I'm not, if things, if like things aren't going the way that I want them to go necessarily, it doesn't matter. It doesn't knock me off course. It used to knock me off course all the time.
I'm really enjoying this conversation, because I have so many 4/6s and so many projectors who are, that exact thing that I really value you sharing your experience for them. The 5 in me loves it, because I want to help, right? Like every part of me, I'm like, I want to help. And I can't, because my experience is not that. And, it doesn't matter how many times I say this head heart thing that you have going on as a 4/6, right? Like this, do I use logic? Do I use my heart? Like I can talk about it, but until you experience like really this, like I could feel it as you were talking then, until you choose to live and lead from that heart space, and to love yourself enough or so much that it doesn't matter what other people think, there's always going to be this edge of, if I reject them, I will, it's not necessarily conscious, I don't think, but I'll reject them first so no one can hurt me. And this kind of being super critical of others, and quite judgy of like how others are living or how they're behaving or whether it's morally good enough or right. Like I see that quite a lot. And it's from this place of, and like so much of me is like, just please love yourself more, which, you cannot do for another human being. And so much of my work has been like, I'm just like, can I be a guide without being a savior?
Yes. I think you demonstrate that. Well, I know that you demonstrate that so beautifully, though, through your work, like the way that you show up. Yeah.
Journey.
So you're an incredible role model for like 4/6s and projectors in that way. Oh God, I used to be so super critical of other people, and this like I'm gonna reject you before you reject me, like literally, like that was the story of my life. I remember once that I was speaking to a friend, like I really want to find a partner, and like why can't I find anyone, and I just like keep finding these players, and I seem to have like a relationship. All my partners like lived overseas. I was like, I'd never had a relationship with anybody as I was living in the UK. And she just turned around to me one day and she went, you do realize, don't you, that you're the player? And I was like, what? And actually what it did is it caused me to look at me, and I realized I was the one. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a player, but I was the one that was pushing people away, and I was putting myself very firmly in relationships that did not serve me. They didn't even live in the same country. And as soon as I started to accept that and realize that all through my life, I'd just been cutting people off, and it was a self-preservation. I mean, you know, I talk about when I left my family, my friends and family, that they cut me off. Actually, I cut them off. I cut them off.
And those pieces of like deep truth are what adulting is for me, right? Like those pieces of deep truth where we admit to ourselves the reality of what's happening, and rather than rejecting ourselves, saying, even if I am that kind of love, I must accept myself. And for me, so my moon, I've got moon in Sagittarius in the 12th house. And so similarly, I loved to date emotionally unavailable men and or people who were already in relationships with other people, because, you know, I would just be able to have the right amount of contact with them and also be special all of the time and only get the good bits and never any of the fights, right? And again, somebody recently, I mean, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, said to me, you do realize you're the emotion, like, I'm like, why are there so many emotionally unavailable men? You do realize you are the one who's emotionally unavailable. And they're like, the smack in the face that is huge, right? But you've also got to be ready for it. And for me, that was adulting. Like, that is a moment, like a maturity marker for me of like, oh yeah, it's totes me. And so then having human design and being able to go, oh, I'm an emotional authority, I'm a subtle wave, I can't see my own emotions, 12th moon and 12th house, is just mind-blowing, right? And it gives me that logic that allows me to then explore it and feel curiosity rather than shame.
Do we have the same friend?
Maybe. And whoever this person is, if you could just go around, you know, I think I am that friend for most people. But it's a big deal. And like, it's it might sound cruel, and like sometimes I feel like the baddie being the person who says those things, but also both of us have just said it changed my reality. It was like, oh, and so it's always a thank you. Those hard truths may be difficult to stomach in the moment, but they're amazing.
Yeah, and I think all relationships mirror each other. So this was when I was still working in corporate, and it resulted in, you know, I'm now with Kev. We've been together for 9 years. He's amazing. Like, I would never have been able to have that opportunity to share my life with him if I hadn't come to that realization. But also, it's helped with my other relationships in my life, and now with my clients as well. And it's something that I am consistently working on as well. You know, like, I will have that natural tendency to fear of rejection. So, you know what? I'm not going to be rejected. I'm not even going to like offer anything. Like, I'm just no one's gonna reject me if I don't ask for anything. So really getting over that and healing myself with that, so that I'm not the bottleneck within my business, and I can actually go out and create success doing what I love to do. That has given me access to be able to heal around that as well.
I love that. And I like, for me, these conversations are where we bring the theory to life and like show like how it is demonstrated, or the tangibility of it in real life. I think, yeah, like the other aspect of that for me has been recently, again, like, I'm like, why am I sharing this? It's too vulnerable, but that's just the thing for me. Looking at my unconscious Mars, which is our, you know, our wound that we can't see, this like part that we won't look at. And for me, that is gate 29. And in the gene keys, it's half-heartedness, commitment and devotion. And really contemplating that for myself, really noticing all the places where, when I feel wounded or hurt or unseen or rejected or, you know, all of that, what's my response? Fuck it, fuck you, I'm leaving. And so recently, when I've noticed that, I've been like, okay, is that real? Like, is that the response that you want to have here? what would it look like to act from devotion? What would it look like to stay committed to my values, to what I believe in, to my truth, to my core, all of those things? And that's, at the moment, I am in a place of witnessing my own transformation as I play with devotion. And it's, again, that's another example for me of like how human design gives me a way into my own maturity, my own self-actualization, you know?
That's so beautiful. It's just, and it's important to share these things and be vulnerable about these things. You know, you were talking earlier about judgment. I mean, I come from a family of judges. I mean, we used to look, I was brought up to look down on people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses because they were wrong and they were worldly. And even though I broke free from that, I was so judgmental all through my life, but more so with myself. You know, so real compassionate self-forgiveness has been a real learning point for me as well. Just to be able to understand that about myself, and how can I, coming back again to this trust, this trust of self, trusting your inner guru, trusting yourself to lead, trusting yourself to make the decisions. And then you're not so dependent and hung up on others.
Yeah. I want to kind of shift slowly into one of the things that we said we would talk about is courage. And as you talk about trust, like for me, courage and trust are the same, right? Like people always think that there's something else that's going to make them more courageous. And my belief, my understanding in this area is the more that you trust yourself, the more courageous you can be. How does one, in your words, develop trust or become more self-trusting?
Well, I think it definitely comes back to really understanding yourself and being prepared to go there. So, all the things that we've just been speaking about, like, am I gonna just like brush that under the carpet, or am I actually going to take responsibility for it? I think taking responsibility for every single action and situation that we have created within our lives is such a taboo subject, right? It really is. But I look at everything that has happened in my life, including the family that I was born into, and I take full responsibility for it. And if I can take full responsibility for something, that's really liberating, because it means that I can change it. So I have that freedom. And B, it means that I can then trust myself to go out and do the things that I want to in life and not be afraid of failure, not be afraid of rejection, not be afraid of, well, I don't know, whatever, like being picked on, whatever it is, not being afraid of being judged by other people, because I actually know myself and I can trust myself to do it. So I think it's that self-love piece. And again, coming back to human design and Gene Keys, awesome. That's why I love it so much, because it's a tool to be able to get to know ourselves more and trust ourselves. And also, I think like really, I've had to do a lot of work, and this is a continuous journey. I've had to do a lot of work around really falling in love with and trusting my body, and not rejecting it, and really loving it, and really nurturing it, and really caring for it. And I think the more that we can be connected with our body and really intimately connected with our body, we can start to drop out of our heads where the fear and the monkey brain chatter is, and drop into our bodies where the true wisdom lies. And trust that, to make the decisions, trust the intuition, trust ourselves. And when we can trust ourselves in that way, we have courage then to be able to step into whatever our zone of awesomeness is. That's my take on it.
Really love that. And I just had a massive aha while you're talking. This, by the way, is why I like talking to projectors. Like, I just have to be around them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. The bit that just landed in my head, and now I'm like, I want to do some more work on this, is, and I'm like, is this too deep and geeky for the main episode? Well, I'm going to do it anyway, because in the Patreon part, I want to talk to you about confidence and visibility and those things.
Okay, cool.
I'll do that in a second. But the aha, because I'm going to have people being like, you didn't share it. So I will. I too have experienced that disconnect from my body. And I think as a society that doesn't value, that only values a very slim, pun intended, of female body, there is a disconnect there. Like, the whole world has been set up over many years for us to be disconnected from our bodies. Mm-hmm. But the aha that I just had was, if our mind, oh my God, I'm like, so this is my go over people's head. So as a 5'2", my 5 is my mind. My 2 is my body. It's my vehicle. It's my unconscious. And the 2 is the natural, and then the wise woman, and yada, yada, yada. And one of the things that I have struggled with the most over my life is not being able to see my body the way that other people see it. Two-line much. And the other thing, or the thing that has turned it all around, is to stop listening to everybody else's wisdom about my body and to let it just tell me what to do, because it knows better than me and I don't know how it knows, but it's a natural, right? And that was the aha. I was like, oh, similarly with you as a 6, it's like, okay, well, that's the vehicle, and it would have been different. There's going to be these 3 stages of your body. And anyway, that was my geeky aha moment.
3 stages of my body. Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all know that it's been orchestrated, right, on purpose to have this disconnect. And I believe it's my part of my quest to really come back to her.
Me too. And in, one of the things that has been part of that journey has been, and we all do it in our own way, right, of like following what is right for us. And I love being in community with other women who are modeling that. And so, for all the people who thank me for showing up in places and in clothes that make me feel uncomfortable or have done, I really, really honor you for leading visibility from this place of beauty and essence and feeling and sensation, because it's so visceral from you. So I wanted to thank you, and that also we're going to continue that conversation in the Patreon part. So yeah, how does that sound?
Good to me.
So I know time just disappears. For those of you who want to continue the conversation, come join us in the Patreon part. For those who are like, I've loved listening to Abigail, where do I go and find out more? I'm going to put all your links in the show notes, but where's the best place for them to come and find you?
Probably my website, abigailrebecca.com, and you'll be able to find out a little bit more about me and my story. I've got a blog, I've got YouTube. You can just have a little root around. I like to make it quite interesting on there. And then I really love to hang out on Instagram as well. I'm the Visibility Goddess on Instagram. So come and connect and let me know that you found me through Ebony, and I'd love to connect with you back.
Beautiful. Perfect. I will do that when it comes out. I'll make sure I share and tag you and all of those things as well. Thank you for today. We are going to wrap this up and then open the conversation and talk about the how of visibility, and like, what does it mean, particularly as a projector, with this, like, I want to be more visible, but how do I get my voice out there when no one's inviting me? That piece. Yes.
Yeah, that's a really important piece.
Thank you.